All right. All right, everybody. Here we are today on my show with a very special guest, Alex Charfen, a man who is obsessed with entrepreneurs, with solving entrepreneurs' problems, even though entrepreneurs normally solve their own problems, because that's what we do. But a person who's a problem solver for problem solvers, Mr. Alex, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome, man. So just to open, I want to just ask. I've been dying to write my own book, I guess, and I like to write, but I'm not too good at it yet. And you have a best-selling book, right? I'm not sure exactly how many copies, right? But the Entrepreneurial Personality Type, right? I know it's gone around a lot of circles. Why did you write the book? How long did it take you? Just go through that, the book writing process, because that's honestly what I want to know about.
Man, Aaron, I think I'm going to give you a really weird answer to this. So I'll give you the story behind the book. In 2016, I was trying to write a book called Constructive Company, and it was all of the principles and processes that we've used to build our 7- and 8-figure businesses and what we've used to help other people. And I was writing a proposal for a publisher that they had given me an outline, and the outline included 300 words on who's going to read the book. And so I tried to write 300 words about entrepreneurs, and I couldn't. I was so stuck. I'm like, God, it doesn't feel like there's enough. I really was struggling with it. The rest of the book proposal was relatively easy, but talking about entrepreneurs was really hard. And so it was like a Saturday morning, and I got up and I went and talked to my wife. I got a glass of water. I went for a walk. I was getting this massive writer's block. I couldn't figure out why. Literally couldn't put a word down. And I was like, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll take off that 300 word limit, and I'll write what comes out, and then we'll edit it. Well, by Sunday night, through tears and emotions and so much processing, I wrote 22,000 words in 2 days. And we ended up editing that down to the book. And it was part dictation, part typing, but it was dude, it was one of the most intense experiences I've ever had in my life. And I've had a lot of intense experiences. It was downloads and connections and all of this stuff that I've studied throughout my life just came together in that moment. And Constructive Company was forgotten for a while. And I really just focused on writing that book. And I went and presented some of the initial stuff from that book at Genius Network with Joe Polish. And I did a 10-minute talk. I actually went 12 and a half minutes, but he let me do it. And it was this explosion. I shared this entrepreneurial personality type and how we're different and we need momentum and how we live this life of questions and how the rest of the world doesn't understand us. And that's why we're so important. And we are the most important people in the world. And when I shared that at Genius, almost immediately, people were like, I need you to speak at my event. I need you to come here. Wow. I ended up speaking with Tony Robbins at several events, with Russell Brunson at his event, with Robin Sharma. Robin actually invited me to his actual event. And Robin was one of my heroes. The monk who sold his Ferrari totally changed my life when I was in my 20s. And so it was this very transcendent event that helped me create this book. And the reason I wrote it is because it's an argument about people like us and why we behave the way we do. I think entrepreneurs are the most important people in the world. I've done a tremendous amount of research around successful people. And when you look at successful people, we are different. You expect to find people who have talents and skills and abilities, and what you find is people who have a lot of issues. Richard Branson is dyslexic. Thomas Edison was sent home at 5 years old because he wasn't smart enough to be in school. Einstein failed algebra, which was so awesome that I read that because it was right when I was failing algebra. And so when my mom was like, hey, you're failing algebra, I'm like, just like Einstein. The more it's extraordinary. The more you look at people who we remember, people who matter to be remembered, they were totally different, unique, and not average, because let's get real, no one average ever changed the world.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And what do you think it is something that could be, let's say, developed or created out of somebody? How much percentage are you entrepreneur, and then can you develop that? Or how much do you believe is born or created?
That whole nature nurture argument, I think what happens in modern science is that nature nurture becomes a switch. It's like, it's got to be nature or it's got to be nurture. And, so that's that like nature is what you're born with. Nurture is what is like your environment and what you learn and what you pick up on. And I feel like it's a massive combination of both. I think that in my experience, Aaron, 100% of the entrepreneurs I've ever worked with have had really traumatic childhoods. They might not know it, but they have. They've experienced a tremendous amount of pressure and noise in their lives. They've usually have some serious childhood wounds of like not being seen, not being heard, not being understood, being abandoned. Like those types of feelings carry forward with them in life. And I think it's a lot of what drives us to be successful. And it's also a lot of what allows us to be entrepreneurs. I always tell people you are bound to repeat the energetic of your childhood until you take time to process it and understand it. And I think for a lot of us, we are repeating the energetic of our childhood. It's uncertain. It feels unsafe. It feels overwhelming. There's too much to do. There's not enough time. That's where most entrepreneurs live. But when we take the time to process what's happened to us, to understand our trauma through a number of modalities, I've used quite a few, we regulate our nervous system, we get into our bodies, and we start making decisions from not a heady, logical, like overclocking, trying to push everything through space. We start making decisions from a place of our heart and our feelings and our instinct and our intuition, and really everything changes when you can make that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I kind of take from this is everybody has trauma, though. That's the thing. Like
100%.
Yes, every entrepreneur has had trauma and has problems and has things that have affected them. But I want to say here on planet Earth, it is pretty much impossible for a person to have an untraumatic life. I mean,
doesn't happen.
You see what I'm saying? So it's almost like, yeah, every entrepreneur has had problems because you're on planet Earth, buddy. Like we have issues, right? Anywhere, in your city, in your state, in your country, on the planet, globally, environmentally, politically, wherever. So I feel like that is a human condition, and in what you're putting forth, like yes, I we've all had issues, and I really sincerely believe that. I also think that any person who can self-describe themselves as, hey, I am entrepreneurial, right? I can take risks and make big things happen. That could be a switch that a person just needs to turn on, and you can become one from not being one, right? Because think about it, like it's just an idea. You can hold on to it. Hey, I am this type of person who can do big things. And in that one statement, in that one moment, I believe you could go from not being the type to becoming the type. What do you say to that?
We call those people seekers. I have a framework called the Billionaire Code, and it's the 9 levels you go through to go from 0 to 100 million. Anybody who wants, you can check it out at billionairecode.com. And that first level of entrepreneurship, we call it seekers. It's the people who say, hey, maybe, maybe there's something more here. Maybe I can do something here. Maybe I can help more people. Maybe I can make a bigger difference. And I personally think anyone can be an entrepreneur. If they're thinking about should they, then the answer is yes. Yes. And your mind wouldn't make it up unless you had the capability to do it. But I think what happens to so many of us with our personality type is the suppression that we experience as children is massive. Like, I don't know about you, Aaron, but I was a very different kid. And I don't know, like, if you relate to any of this, I'd love to hear it. So I was so different that like adults would attenuate their voice. They'd be like, look, there's Katie and Aaron and Alex. And I knew, like I could hear it, I knew I was that different. And I was so different that I really had a hard time finding any place that I belong or any place that I fit. Mm-hmm. And so for me, entrepreneurship was like, I have a hard time following anybody else's rules. So I went in this direction that honestly didn't feel risky. It felt much less risky to do my own thing than to have to follow somebody else's rules. It felt much less risky to kind of forge my own path than to try and like fit into a box. And so for me, it was like the entrepreneurial personality was like a 10 out of 10 from a very young age. I think for some people, the suppression we have, like in school, I used to ask a lot of questions. I asked sincere questions and I would get in trouble. I asked sincere questions in Sunday school and they told my parents not to bring me back. Wow. I was that kid that like, I was very curious and a lot of inquiry. And so what would happen is I would show curiosity and it would get suppressed. I would show inquiry, it would get suppressed. I would be confused, I would be suppressed. And so for a long time, I didn't trust asking people questions. I still have a hard time asking for help. I don't know about you, but like, if I have to ask somebody for help, even my wife, there's this temporary feeling of feeling vulnerable and exposed. And so I think what happens to so many people who could be out changing the world is that their environment repeatedly suppresses them as children and in young adulthood, and then maybe even throughout their lives. And so they have this like, maybe I could do this, but then that suppression is pushing them backwards. And when we understand our personality type, when we understand the attributes of the entrepreneurial personality type, when we understand who we are, how we're driven by momentum, we start realizing that this question in our head of can I really isn't a question, it's a mission.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I will say, asking questions, it's funny because when I was, I don't know, I must have been 5 or 6 or something, but I was the one always asking questions, and same, I wasn't always in trouble, right? But my mom and my teacher, there was a few people in my life early on that said, listen, there's no such thing as a dumb question, right? Yeah. And we've heard this, but like for me, somehow I just grabbed onto that. And I was the guy always in the room. I'm like asking questions, and there would be half the room would laugh, and then half the room would be like, thank you for asking that, because I was confused too, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I'd get shut down all the time, but that curiosity is something that we lack, as a society, because people are confused all the time and they misunderstand things and they never will get it clarified, right? Yeah. So how is there like, how do you develop allowing people, like, of course I'll tell you, hey guys, you listen to shit, like ask your questions, like please do not tell anybody that your question is wrong, because there will be people. You can ask anything, right? You can literally ask any question and somebody will find something wrong with it. So the problem is not your question. The problem is who you're talking to. But how can you encourage people to like not be afraid to ask questions? Because I'll tell you, I probably am the number one question asker in any event, any function I'm at. I'm always the one asking questions, right? And I think that's part of a positive trait. But why do people not ask these kind of questions, and can that be developed, and how?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a couple answers there, Aaron. If you and I were at the same event, it would be interesting because I'm usually the person asking those questions, you know? And I can't stop it. Like I can't help it. If I have a question and I don't get it answered, I can't hear anything else. It's like stops me. Does it feel like that for you?
Yeah.
Like where if you don't get an answer, all you can think about is the question, and like I get stuck. And so I ask a ton of questions, and I think for someone, let's not just talk about answering the question or asking a question like in a room or something like that. Let's like bring this up to pursuing a question. Like the pursuit of, can I become an entrepreneur? Or the pursuit of, can I do something different? Or the pursuit of, can I change the world? Like, I think those are questions that come up for people like us. And what I've found in my career is that in order to have comfort in asking and pursuing those questions, as entrepreneurial personality types, the way that you create that order in your life, because order creates comfort, then excitement. And lack of order creates dissonance, then disease. And the more we have order in our lives, the better. And so for us as entrepreneurs, when we lower the pressure and noise in our lives, it becomes much easier to follow those inquiries. When we lower the challenges that we have, when we eliminate things we don't need, when we get rid of stuff that's just causing noise and taking away our momentum, suddenly that inquiry of, can I do this, gets a lot more clear. And that inquiry of, should I pursue this, gets a lot more clear. And so where I focus with my clients, with myself, is on central nervous system regulation and optimization. So, we show people how to grow 7 and 8 and 9-figure businesses. And we have an incredible track record. We've worked with ClickFunnels, with Alex and Layla Hormozi, with Daniel Rosen at Credit Repair Cloud. We've helped a ton of people get into that 8-figure range. And we've even helped people exit for over 9 figures.
Nice.
And the consistency in the people who take off are the ones who lower the noise in their lives. And it's a paradox. You need to lower the noise everywhere in your life so you can withstand the noise of growing a business in a way that keeps you regulated. And when I look at that, that reality, that as soon as we get an entrepreneur in our program to start going to EMDR therapy, or we get them to start drinking more water, or start working out, or start taking care of themselves, or get a massage once a week, it doesn't matter what it is, but some level of lowering the noise and taking care of themselves, all of those lines of inquiry that come to us and are begging for answers, suddenly we have the answers and it gets a lot easier.
I love that. I think my wife should listen to this, because she's always asking to put things in order, have order in our lives.
It's the most important thing there is. So I work with a coach, a shaman, named Eddie. He's absolutely amazing. And he taught me that. He's like, order is the highest priority. And I said, why? And he said, because order is calming. And what we want with our personality type is we want excitement. We want to go from lack of order to excitement. And he said, when you do that, you create massive dissonance in your life. We're not in our bodies. We're not clear. We're not really thinking straight. And then we go, oh, I want to go do this big thing. And what happens so often in entrepreneurship, Aaron, is that people are hustling and running and going as hard as they can. And it's like they have not created order. They're just going forward. And then they create this dissonance where they look up one day and they've got this company around them and they go, holy shit, this isn't what I wanted. Like, this isn't even where I want to be. That happened to me.
I've definitely seen that, yeah.
That happened to me. Like I lived that. In my 20s, I ran a company called Sales Out. It was a consultancy that I started when I was 21. And over time, it grew to do about $250 million in sales. We were a multi-million-dollar company. I had 15 offices in the US and Latin America, pretty substantial team. But it almost killed me, Aaron. I didn't have order in my life. I was just running. I was just pushing. I was just hustling. I was so poor. All I had was money. I didn't have relationships. I didn't know a lot of people. I was kind of like blocked off from the world. I was working 7 days a week. And when I turned 30, I met my now wife, Katie, and she changed everything. Like, I had this person who was this incredible mirror back to me. I fell so deeply in love with her within like the first hour and a half of meeting her. Like, for real, the first night we so we met while we were both traveling, and then we talked on a phone for about 6 weeks, and then she came out to Florida to visit me from Texas. And the first night she was there, I proposed and she accepted.
Wow.
And so we were like secretly engaged from the first night we were together. It was life-changing, still is life-changing. She's the most extraordinary thing that's ever happened to me. But when I got together with Katie, I looked up and I'm like, I have this business where I travel 80% of the time. I don't really have any fun at all. Everything feels like I'm either white knuckling or pushing it uphill. I don't want to do this anymore. So I had this company that was the largest of its kind, and I sold like the contracts and fire sailed and got rid of stuff over the course of 6 months because I couldn't do it anymore. When I had that shift with seeing how Katie saw me, I realized I had not grown a business, I'd grown a trap. It was a prison.
Yeah.
Every single day was a prison. And I think for us as entrepreneurs, when we create in an environment of really high personal noise, we often create something we absolutely don't want.
Right. That makes sense. And did you have, when you were in that business, did you have a reason to have, let's say, more money? Like, what drove you? Obviously, you built that thing that wasn't ideal, but what was your thought process during the time when it was like, hey, this business, like, obviously you were going towards something. Did you have a goal in mind, or you just kind of were going with the flow, so to speak?
You know, and I think I was like every other entrepreneur, just trying to make it bigger. You know, like every year had to be bigger than the prior year. Every year I wanted to make more money. Every year I wanted to set new records, you know. And when I look back at that time now, as I approached each one of those outcomes or goals, they lost importance to me. So I'd have to reset them and make them bigger. And honestly, there really wasn't a purpose behind it. I was running a consulting company. We worked with major brands. Like, we did do some cool stuff with like getting product into Latin America earlier, which was nice. But honestly, I think when we create from a place of high pressure and noise, we create growth for the sake of growth. You know what grows for the sake of growth? Cancer.
Right.
Cancer grows for the sake of growth.
Right. So you weren't like, hey, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to go and do some donation or have some bigger purpose, or you didn't have a mission behind what you were doing, really, is kind of what you're getting at.
You know, Aaron, I was working so much that I didn't even have time to think about that. I was working 7 days a week, usually somewhere around 12 hours a day or more.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And with no, with not a goal, not an, like the money for no thing, like no money for X. Just
no, I just piled it up in the bank. Like literally, I piled it up in the bank. I had a Chinese manufacturer who we worked with that there's this custom in China that if somebody does something really great for you, then you give them a tip. So you send them cash. And the manufacturer was a DVD player manufacturer, and I had gotten them on Home Shopping Network, and we like broke the record at Home Shopping Network. Then we broke it again. Then we broke it again. We had like a $12 million day, then like a $17 million day, then like a $22 million day. And after each one of those, that manufacturer sent me somewhere around like $10,000 to $30,000 in cash, like in a FedEx. Like, here's your tip. Thank you for doing so great. And I had so much money in the bank, and I had all this cash, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do with it. So I put it in a cupboard in my kitchen. And it was there when Katie came out like the first time she ever visited. You know, we hung out that first night. Everything was great. The next day, she opens the cupboard and she's like, what the hell is this? It was like all this cash stacked in there. And I'm like, well, I've got this manufacturer. I don't really know what to do with it. It was a gift. If I put it in the bank, I think I'm gonna have to pay taxes. So it's just in the cupboard. And so like there not only did I really not have any greater goals other than finding someone to be in a relationship with, like that was something I really focused on. That was something I really focused on, and I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, great. And then so that the business that you really obviously, you know, in your words, was draining you down, didn't have a purpose, wasn't, you know, was a burden in every sense. What about now? Like, do you have, when you're making this goal, what kind of goals are you having now? And then is that a difference?
Oh, dude. My life could not be more different now, because today, I live a life of massive regulation. Like certain central nervous system regulation is my goal every single day. You know, I spend a tremendous amount of time with my wife, with my kids. I use the systems that we teach entrepreneurs to run my business. So I'm in the business maybe somewhere between 8 to 12 hours a week. Some weeks much less. The only reason I do 8 to 12 is because I'm still the subject matter expert. Otherwise, it would be a lot less than that. Like my one of my team members was here this morning. We just did 3 hours of videos. That's like a big week for me to work 3 hours in a row. And I make decisions from a place of intuition and instinct, not from a place of need and lack and want and greed like I used to. And so the world just unfolds for me like I want it to. And, you know, I'm so far past the point of synchronicities and like coincidences. My life is just like a stream of miracles. And when I need the right person, they're there. And when I am feeling like I need to connect with my wife, she walks into my room. When I want to buy a car, I go on a website and the exact car's on the website. My wife and I just recently bought 2 cars, and she texted me and said, hey, see if you can get the delivery date to be the same time and date. And I was about to text the guy to see if they would deliver it at the same time, and I got a text back with the same time and date as my wife. Like that stuff happens to us all the time because I live in this energetic of presence, this energetic of drawing towards me what I want in life.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And so what is that, the ultimate goal? Like you're in your companies or your personal life, have you defined what is your, the top goal, like your end goal? What is, say, the purpose of your life?
Yeah. So thanks for asking, Aaron. This has actually kind of grown recently. So I run a company called Simple Operations. And for most of my life, I ran a business. I ran a business as my life. And today I run a business that creates my life. And it's totally different. And we show entrepreneurs how to install our Simple Operations system where they can get out of the day-to-day of their business. They can have a lot of time and space. They can start taking care of themselves. They can look at the world differently and do a lot of what I'm talking about. And if you had asked me this like 3 or 4 months ago, I would have said my goal is to share that Simple Operations system with as many entrepreneurs as we can. And you know, it still is. But what's come out of it in the last like 4 or 5 months is my wife and I have been coaching entrepreneurs since 2011, and we had a product in the real estate industry prior to that. And so we have a lot of time working with entrepreneurs and a lot of time working with couples. And we've had some major breakthroughs in our marriage and I've come to some understandings in our marriage where I think our next goal, in addition to putting the simple operation system in as many businesses as possible, we want to help people transcend the biggest problems they have in relationships. And we have we have what we call the relationship operating system that is free with our business membership, because so many married couples are in our membership that we use that for them to get really aligned and clear. Well, dude, over the past few years, we've watched marriages that literally are coming to us on the brink of divorce. We've had more than one couple tell us, we're joining your program or we're getting divorced. And they put that the relationship operating system in place and everything changes. And so I think my new goal is to really refine the relationship product that we have, to really get super clear on it and go out and help entrepreneurs create marriages like I have, where your marriage is the foundation of everything you do. Your marriage is the strength and purpose you walk into every room with. And your marriage creates the launching pad for anything you want to do in your life. And I think when people like us have that secure attachment and we have clear bonding and there's order in our relationship, I know for myself, everything in life gets easier.
That's amazing. I love this. I love this philosophy. In fact, I mean, it aligns very closely to what I believe, which is, right, you work on yourself, you get strong as yourself, then your relationship gets stronger, then that goes into your business, and then overall, you think about the mankind, and you think about humanity, and that keeps going, right? There's compartments to life, and when one gets stronger, the other gets stronger, and so that's a beautiful. Love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks, man. This is one of the first places I've shared that.
Oh, nice, dude. Nice. Boom. There you go. So Alex, tell me, like, let's say as a person, right? And I feel like we kind of talked about it a little bit, but if a person has a business, right? Let's say they're doing pretty well. Maybe they're at $1 million in sales, or even 500,000, 2 million, 3 million, right? What do you think they should be focused on, right, in their business? Like the mindset, or like what will take them, if they want to, right, grow? What are the things they should be putting in place to kind of get into that growth stage?
Yeah, you got it, Aaron. Let's use like that $1 million range, right? Mm-hmm. So here's the issue with growing a $1 million company. When you start your business, what do you have to do to be successful?
Whatever, sell to a client, right?
Everything.
Product, everything. That's the point. Yeah, everything. Good point.
Right? Like when you start your business, you have to do everything. And most entrepreneurs, when we start our business, we are in a heightened emotional state. We're in a heightened reactive state. And the subconscious mind is programmed through emotions and reactivity. And like that heightened emotional state programs our subconscious mind. And so what happens to us is, as we start our business, we are thoroughly and completely conditioned that in order to be successful, we have to do everything. And what happens to so many entrepreneurs is they go from that startup stage and they start growing. By the way, I lived this movie in my 20s. You know, it was like I had a huge team and people all over the world, and I was still doing everything. I'm like, hey, you go do this now, and now you go do this now, and you go do this now. I had no idea how to do it, how to not do that. You know, I was conditioned that if I was going to be successful, I had to go through me. And when we understand that we're in that state of conditioning, when we understand that we're in that place where we feel like we have to do everything, that is one of the keys to growing your business past $1 million. Because in so many circles, $1 million business is like the goal. But honestly, $1 million businesses are incredibly hard to run. You typically don't have enough resources to get the team you really need to get all the problems to go away. And you have $1 million responsibility to clients, but you don't have as much of an infrastructure as you really want. And so it's a hard place to be. And the key for us as visionaries to growing a business, the mindset is you have to stop doing everything yourself. You have to start taking an inventory of everything you're doing and looking at the things that are tactical, looking at the things that somebody else could do, and hand those off, delegate them. We have a process for this where we have people do a 2-week time study. We look at everything they're doing. We actually inventory the data of exactly what they're doing. And then we transition that to hiring somebody to do those things. And we do that with them every quarter. You're always offloading what you're doing and always delegating, always getting support. And I think for any entrepreneur who wants to grow past 7 figures, you have to go from I'm doing everything to we are achieving. And then it's from we are achieving to they are achieving. To separating yourself from that group and saying, I'm the business owner, you guys go do it. And that is a really hard transition to make. You have to go from delegating your time to delegating success. So much different. Hey, go pick this thing up for me. That's delegating time. Hey, create a process so that my stuff gets picked up every week and I don't have to worry about it. And, let me know if you need any help. That's delegating success. And when we make that leap from delegating time to delegating success, everything changes. But it's not easy. If you're doing it in a personality run business, it can be near impossible. When you have a business that has a process that runs it, like an operating system that runs it, not only is it possible, it's actually a lot easier than doing everything yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, people, that's a huge thing. And one thing that I've learned to do that is you inventory what you're doing and you kind of assign arbitrarily a dollar value, right? Hey, this is a $10 an hour job. This is a $20 an hour job. This is a $100 an hour job, right? Like, okay, cool. Taking a package, obviously you could delegate that. But then you're taking a step further where like, hey, your job is to find all these tasks and make sure they're happening, which is brilliant. And that might be, bring up the pay, but, and then do you do a lot of hiring overseas for these types of things, or you're keeping it mostly US?
It really depends on our client. For us, we have team members here in the States. We have team members internationally as well. But it depends on the client. Like we have one company we worked with that had a 35-person team all overseas in the Philippines. We have another company we work with that has like 120 people in India and 100 people here in the States and 30 or 40 in Mexico. It's really wherever the resources are. If you're an entrepreneur just starting out, I can tell you with 100% certainty that there is more help available for us now than there has been at any time in history. And the help is easier to access and like easier to find than it ever has been. I often work with people where they're like, Alex, I can't afford an assistant or I can't afford this. Like, well, you might not be able to afford a stateside assistant that's $75,000 a year, but can you pay $4 an hour? And when you pay $4 an hour, and I think as sometimes we look at like somebody who makes $4 an hour and we think, oh, there's just no way they can be good. Dude, we have extraordinary, unbelievable people on our team that are international that they don't make $4 an hour. They make much more than that, but they don't make anywhere near what we have to pay in the States. And honestly, they're better than a lot of people that I've had working in the States. And so if you're a starting out entrepreneur and you're willing to go out and interview people internationally and they're willing to work in your time zone, they can be some of the most effective people you have. I wasn't born in the States. I grew up in Mexico. So I think I look at it a little different. I'm like, international or people are just people. But I often have people tell me like, oh, I don't know if I could work with somebody in the Philippines. And I'm like, dude, with Zoom, who cares? They speak English, you get over a little bit of an accent and you can get some absolutely brilliant, ridiculously motivated people that will kill for you. They will work so hard for you because there's a pride of working for an American company, even if it's small. And so there's more help available today than there ever has been. And if you're an entrepreneur who's doing too much, slow things down and start looking at where can you get leverage. That's like an obsession in my life. I'm always looking for a place to put a lever. Like, how do I make things easier? How do I optimize? How do I make it so that I put out less effort to get a much bigger result? And I think sometimes when I say that, people are like, wow, what a lazy way to look at things. I'm like, no, it's not lazy.
Efficiency.
Yeah, I want to change the world. And changing the world takes a tremendous result. I want to In 2008, we launched a product that helped solve the foreclosure crisis. We worked with Obama. We worked with Director Lockhart at the U.S. Treasury. We worked directly with the Obama's advisors. They would meet with us and go meet with him. And so I'm all about like doing big things and making big changes. The way that I know how to do that is to get in my body, to get really like clear and to put out as little effort as I can for the biggest result. I think as entrepreneurs, we never ask what would be easy, what would be fun, what would be interesting, what would make it so that I'd want to do this even if I wasn't getting paid. Instead, we ask, how big can I make it? How much can I make? How much more can I bring on? How many more people can I have? How much bigger of a team can I have? Can I get the award? And I think that secondary line of thinking is where you end up in a trap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. So I I want to say, just circling back to that question and how people are asking questions all the time, I like to rephrase it. A little hack that I do is, instead of saying like, can I make $1 million company? Can I make 100 million? Because our minds are very powerful and very strong, and we'll get an answer, right? You ask a question, you are going to find an answer. 100%. And so instead of, can I make this, $10 million company, you say, how can I make this $10 million company? How can I achieve this thing? Yeah. And then it's already the assumption is that it's already done. It's already very possible, and you will do it. Now it's how. And then so you're putting your attention on the solution as opposed to, is there a solution? So it's just a little change, right? And there's these little hacks that, like, just change the question. How do I do this? Because you're going to get an answer, I
kind of like the question right after that. Not just how do I do this? Who can I get to do it for me?
Oh, look at that. That's the next one.
Right?
Who do I need to have with me?
Or who's the biggest shortcut for this? Like, who do I know that's done this before?
That's amazing.
Right? Because when you really look at it, like, as entrepreneurs, we stand on the shoulders of giants if we choose. If we choose to take information from other people, if we choose to take shortcuts from other people, we can get things done so much faster. And so one of the questions when I'm trying to do something that I ask is, like, who's already done this? And can I get them on the phone? And I think I'm super fortunate that I can usually get just about anybody on a call sooner or later. I've got a big network and people who are willing to stake their reputation for me. And so when I get on a call with someone who's been there, when I get on a call with someone who has knowledge, dude, sometimes a 1 hour call is worth 5 years of work. That's what I'm talking about when I say, what's the least I can do to get the biggest result? How do I set myself up for success? How do I make this not easy, because nothing we do is easy, but how do I make it easier than it would be alternatively?
I love that question. That's another little changer there. Who's done it and who am I going to talk to? That's brilliant. Love that.
Thank you.
Okay, now just for some stats, right? And again, I'm not sure how much you share or whatnot, but could you go over your successes, let's say in the last year or a couple of years of your business success, right? So a lot of people who listen to the show will be like, hey, well, listen to this guy, but like, why should I listen to him? Of course, okay, you from yourself, your marriage is doing fantastic. You're very pleased with your life. You're achieving things that you've wanted to achieve. And then what about the financial aspect? How are your businesses doing? Revenue and or profit, if you are open to share.
Yeah, sure. My wife, so our businesses do really well. We are involved in real estate. We also have our coaching company. My wife and I take home well over $1 million a year, and we have a lifestyle that to us is more important than more money than that. Mm-hmm. We spend a tremendous amount of time together. We spend a lot of time with our kids. And so for me, I've released this whole obsession around, like, who has the biggest business at the table. Mm-hmm. I've been there, Aaron. And for a lot of that time, I was the biggest business at the table, and I was miserable. And now I have more than enough money coming in to do what I want. I mean, we bought 2 cars this week. We pretty much do whatever we want. We're going to Guatemala in 2 weeks for 10 days and not going to even touch a phone. And to me, success is not just piling up money in the bank. Success is like, how do you feel on a day-to-day basis? Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I feel like we're still financially more successful than most, and we're in the very top 1% or 0.5% of earners. And when you look at our investments, we're probably in the top 1/4 or 0.2%. But what really matters to me is that I live a lifestyle that very few people will ever experience. I live a lifestyle of connection and love and calm and, periods of intense and crazy excitement, but also periods of being able to just be and be intentionally and move, speak, and act with intention. And so financial success is crucially important to me, and it's a huge part of my life, but it doesn't drive my life anymore.
Absolutely. Brilliant. And hey, top 1%, top 0.5%, whatever that is, more than $1 million, that is rich. I mean, that's the top percent, right? There's people who protest because a person like you exists. People like 100%. Us exist. Which is weird because obviously their life is very non-intentional. Who told them to go and protest for that? Like, anyway, but here's
Isn't it crazy though, Aaron? Like really, the point you just made is so crazy because when I say that as entrepreneurs, we're different than the rest of the world, here's exactly what I mean. The rest of the world calls us the 1%, and it's not a compliment. It's actually an insult. In any, right? In any other discipline, if you're in the top 1% of marathon runners, you're a winner. If you're in the top 1% of baseball players, you're a winner. If you're in the top 1% of anything else, the world says, hey, you're really good at what you do. If you're in the top 1% of success, you suck. And
isn't that weird?
I think it's just a lot of conditioning. The rest of the world is conditioned to think that if you have something they don't have, that you must have done something wrong. What entrepreneurs, what people don't see is what I see with entrepreneurs. The more they earn, the more lives they're changing. The more money they're making, the more of a contribution they're making. The more, and this is in my world, in the companies I coach, when they make more money, they are absolutely changing the world and contributing at the highest level. So when somebody says, in an insulting way, the 1%, it's one of those places where I will often engage in a high velocity conversation with them until I convince them that they're wrong.
Yeah, no, I love that. And the thing that you're saying too is which companies, because as you're saying, when you're in your 20s and you're going for this money and you don't have a vehicle that you want to pour that money into, you don't have a charity, you don't have a goal, you don't have a purpose to push that money into, then that money is useless. It's useless in the bank. It's actually funding war and funding horrible things. Our tax money, unfortunately, a lot of it funds terrible activities. Not all of it, but some of it does. Money in the bank. So if you just make money for money, that could actually be literally bad for not just you, but for your family and for your community. But if you put that money and you know what you're going to do with it, and you have an intentionality about that money and what you will fund and what you're going to back up, and for your own life or your life around you or for your community, whatever, the United States, who knows, whatever group you want to put into, then that money is intentional. Otherwise, it's not.
Yeah, I always tell people when they say money can't buy happiness, I always tell them they just haven't given enough away.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. Awesome, Alex. Well, that's brings us to the end of this interview right here. Sadly, but I wanna thank you very much for sharing all of your insights into business and into your life and into being intentional, not just about yourself, but about what you're gonna support and what you're gonna put your intentions towards and who you're gonna help. Because the thing is, any business you do has an audience or a customer who you could help. And that's what business is about. And the money, if you're doing well, is going to come as a result. And if you've been intentional, your money will also then multiply toward your goals. So thank you for all that, sharing all that. And then in closing, is there anything you'd like to share with anybody who is, wanting to be intentional with their life, with their business? Any final closing thoughts?
Yeah. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably are an entrepreneurial personality type. And I want you to know something. Every one of us has felt isolated and alone and confused and like we're a party of one and we have no connection in the world. I've been there. I've been there more than once. And if I have really bad days, not recently, but I could have gotten there a few years ago just with a bad day. And what I want all of you to know is there is nothing wrong with you and you are not alone. People like us have changed the world for centuries and for the entire history of the world. And the world has this equation that if you don't look like everyone else and talk like everyone else and show up like everyone else, you're a broken person. Then we have to medicate and change so that you're just like everyone else and standardize. The reality is if you don't look like everyone else and talk like everyone else and show up like everyone else, you are probably exactly the person that should go out and change the world. And so don't ever let anyone talk you out of the inquiry if you can do this. Instead, follow that inquiry. Lower the noise in your life. Understand that you're moving in a direction of doing something much more significant and much more exciting with this one life that you have. And if I can ever be of support to you, I've got a podcast called Momentum for the Entrepreneurial Personality Type. It's first person. I share a lot of information on how you can get into momentum and create momentum in your life. And Aaron, you mentioned the EPT book. You can go to freeeptbook.com and get a copy and we'll pay for it.
Boom. Awesome, guys. That was Alex Charfen. Peace out.